that I'm going to film for you guys right now. Hope you guys are all doing well today. Today's topic is going to be about the feminine cycle, so the menstrual cycle specifically, and I may or may not share my personal experience with birth control as part of this, but we'll see as I get into it. So I'm going to start off by talking about the phases of the feminine cycle. So I'm going to start with proliferative phase, and I'm going to work my way down to the menstrual phase. So the main reason that I'm doing this topic is because if you guys remember, a couple weeks ago I posted in my community page about how a lot of people don't know too much about the feminine cycle, about the menstrual cycle, and this includes women and men. So I wanted to share a little bit of what I know about this cycle, how I've learned to work with my own cycle and how to coordinate my life around that. So if this can be helpful to anybody, then that's mainly the reason why I want to post this. So to start off here, so the first part of the feminine cycle is a proliferative phase. So there are different hormones that control different parts of the cycle during different times of the month. So if you're a woman, you'll probably already recognize that you're a completely different person week by week. There's like one week where you're very energetic, and then there's another week where you're like dead, and it could be like week by week, it could change. But yeah, let's see, how do I want to talk about this here? So let's go by week 1. We'll do proliferative phase. So the proliferative phase is basically the phase right after the menstrual cycle, so right after you have your period. This would be the week right after that. So this phase of the cycle, the main hormone that controls this part of the cycle is estrogen. So during this part of the cycle, you'll notice that you're going to be feeling a lot calmer usually, but your energy is increasing day by day. You'll notice that you might have a less of an appetite as well. I don't know why I can't talk right now. I don't know if it's Mercury retrograde or what, but like I feel like I cannot form a complete sentence. I feel like a toddler right now, so bear with me, you guys. It could be because I'm on my cycle as well, so maybe I'm a little bit like brain dead, but we'll see. So yeah, so as I was saying, estrogen is the main hormone that controls this part of the cycle. You'll notice that like right after your period, so let's say if your period is like 5 days long, like day 6, 7, 8, maybe you have a little bit less energy, but you feel very calm, and then the energy starts to increase after day 8. So after day 8, you'll notice like energy is increasing every single day. You have a lot of mental clarity. You feel very logical during this time of your cycle. So you might notice that as you're coming out of this feminine energy of menstruation, you start to step into the masculine energy as estrogen is taking over. You guys feel very productive. You'll feel like you can get a lot of things done. You're very focused, and you're more likely to get a lot of your heavy work done during this time of the cycle as well, because you're not really weighed down by the feminine emotions that cause you to feel emotional or that cause you to feel slow or tired. So yeah, when it comes to me personally, that's definitely how I feel my phase goes. Like I'm very connected to my menstrual phase, and I feel like it has a lot to do with the fact that I was on birth control for 3 years. So the reason that I personally got on birth control is because my cramps were so bad that I could not function. Like there were times where I had to leave school. I had to call my dad to pick me up. One time I had to call my mom to pick me up. Another time, one time my mom even had to come get me from work when I was in college because I could not stand up properly. Like that's how bad my cramps are, and I know everybody doesn't experience that, but I do have a particularly hard time with my cycle. When I first started my cycle, like my early teen years, I would get very nauseous. I would have a lot of stomach issues, like GI issues as well. There would even be times where I was very faint and I would be very close to passing out. So that's another one of the main reasons that I got into health and fitness, is because I wanted to counteract that. I wanted to figure out a way to work with my body instead of having my body work against me. So yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm gonna be jumping around like I always do. You guys know how I do. But yeah, so like I got on birth control, I want to say when I was 19. And I remember like I was sitting in the car with my mom, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need to get on birth control because I cannot have this slowing down my life like this. I cannot have this affecting my life to the point where I feel like I can't get anything done. So I ended up getting on birth control, and it did help with my cycle, obviously, because birth control, the one that I got on, was hormonal. It was the pill, and it controls your cycle for you so you don't ovulate. And at the time I thought it was a great option for me. But I did realize that it affected my mental health and my body more than I would have known in the beginning. So personally, I did gain a bit of weight, not like significantly, but I was a little bit fuller, I guess, in certain areas of my body when I was on the pill. I was very emotional too. Like, I was a little bit more emotionally unstable, and I was very depressed. That's one thing I will always remember about being on the pill. So I was on it from like ages 19 to 21, probably 21, 22. And I just remember feeling very depressed. I remember feeling like everything was very dark. I would cry a lot. Like, my emotions were just very unstable. Like, the simplest thing could set me off, and I was not feeling my best mentally. So when I made the decision to come off the pill, it was because at that time I had already stepped into a little bit of my spiritual journey, and I was thinking to myself that I didn't want something suppressing my feminine side, because that's really what the pill does. It controls the feminine aspect of your energy. So you don't ovulate, which means you're not in tune to your body's rhythms and cycles. And as a woman, that's a very important thing, at least to me. What I've realized, that is very important to me, and I feel like all women should be aware of their cycle. So when I got off of that, it was because I had finally made the decision to reconnect back to my body and reconnect back to my just the way I'm supposed to function as a woman. So I was like, fuck this, like, let me get off this. And then I'll be 28 this year, so it's been almost 6 years now of me being off the pill, and my body has, thankfully, my body restored itself very quickly. So within like 2 months, 3 months, I was back to a normal cycle where I was ovulating and I was having a healthy period. So I'm very grateful for that. I know some girls and some women have a hard time like getting their period again or starting to ovulate again, and it can be difficult for them. But I'm thankful that it wasn't like that for me. So once I got back on track, I was able to start tracking my cycle, and I was able to start tracking different parts of the month where I felt different symptoms and the way that my mental health felt. So I was getting very in tune with myself. So as I was saying, proliferative phase, this is where our hormones are very steady. So estrogen is the main hormone. We're feeling steady, we're feeling good, clear, logical, productive. You're probably, like I said, not as hungry during this time of the month. There's more going on in the mind. So the next phase would be the ovulatory phase, and this is where we have a couple surges of different hormones that actually help us ovulate. So ovulation is when an egg is released from the ovary. So the hormones that help control this are luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So the follicle stimulating hormone will actually cause the egg to erupt from the ovary. Luteinizing hormone is going to help start to form the what can I think? I don't want to say the layers. It's not layers. It's more like the lining of the uterus once it starts to form. So during the ovulatory phase, this is a very short phase of time. It's usually only like 2 to 4 days for some people. For me personally, it's like 2 or 3 days. So during this time of the month, you're going to notice that you have an insane burst of energy. You're going to feel very strong. You're going to feel very outgoing. You're going to feel very social. So these will be times of the month where you're like, oh, I want to go out, or like, I want to party, I want to go talk to people, I want to go be friendly. And this is because we're having a testosterone boost. So as women, we do have testosterone, but not as much as men. The typical man has at least like 10 times more testosterone than we do, if not more. So we get a little bit of a burst of that, so we feel very good. This is when we're in our masculine energy. We're feeling very confident. A lot of the times, like, studies have been done as well that show that women are more attractive during their ovulatory phase. So we will seem more attractive to the opposite sex. We will be also more willing to engage in sexual activities. I will leave it at that. We'll be feeling very playful, more attractive. We put ourselves out there more. We're more likely also to socialize with men or to want to be around men. And that is if you are attracted to men, of course. I personally feel like these are like some of the best days of the month because I can get so much done. I feel so confident. I feel so good about myself, mentally, physically. Like, nothing can really get in my way. Like, I feel like a human bulldozer at this time of the month. You'll probably notice at this time of the month as well that you need less sleep. You don't really need as much sleep, or you'll wake up earlier. So usually when you have a burst of testosterone, you'll notice that you'll want to wake up earlier. And that does definitely happen with me. I'll notice that during my ovulation phase, or as I'm getting closer to it, probably like days like 10 to 14, I'll wake up like 2 hours earlier than I typically do, and that's because my hormones are at a great place. Testosterone is high, we're feeling good. And that's typically how most men function. So most men will naturally want to wake up in the earlier hours of the day because that's when their testosterone is the highest. So for us, we kind of get a little bit of a taste of that in the middle of the month, middle of our cycle. So yeah, I think I mentioned everything there. Yeah, you'll feel more sexual, more playful, more talkative, confident. You'll want to go out more, bursts of energy. So if you're into fitness, this is definitely a great time to like test your maxes, or to do some like heavy aerobic activity, to do something that's like very intense or rigorous, some form of activity that's very intense, because you're going to feel like you have the energy for it and you're going to feel very up for it as well. So the next phase is the luteal phase. So I kind of like to break this up into like the early luteal phase and then the later luteal phase, because I've noticed that they can be very different when it comes to the symptoms that we experience. So the luteal phase is right after ovulation. So it'll be probably for most women around like, it can start as early as like day 15. So like literally the day after you ovulate, you'll start to feel your energy go down, and it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm in my luteal phase now. It can be very short-lived. So days like 15, 16 to like maybe days 19 or 20, that's like the early luteal phase. So for a lot of women, these can be like the worst days. This is when you'll notice that like, and like at least for me, like I definitely notice it, where like every day that I wake up as I get closer to my cycle, I definitely feel worse. I feel more run down. I feel tired. You'll notice that you'll want to slow down. You'll notice that your emotions will be more activated. You'll be very sensitive as well. You'll probably want to sleep in more. You'll also notice that you have less strength, like less physical strength. You'll also notice that you might not want to use the logical part of your brain as much, but you'll feel more emotional and intuitive. So when it comes to getting like practical work done or being like super productive, that might be very difficult during this time of the month, because this is when progesterone actually starts to take over. So the main hormone that takes over in this week of the cycle is progesterone, which is actually the pregnancy hormone. So this is the time of the month where our body is essentially preparing for pregnancy if we were to get pregnant, which happens every single month, right? We have a chance to do this every single month, and obviously most women don't get pregnant every month, and that's why we have a period. So yeah, less strength focus, increased sensitivity, more emotional, more intuitive. You'll probably notice that your intuition is like off the chain at this time, but you're very emotional as well. You'll probably start to notice PMS symptoms start to form. So like food cravings. You'll be more tired, less social. You might start to have skin issues during this time. So for my ladies that break out a lot, this is probably when that will happen, or you'll have like emotional outbursts, or you'll just feel very sensitive. You might feel very moody as well. Like for me personally, I get very introspective, and like I don't want to talk to anybody for a couple days when I'm in this time of my cycle. Because I just feel so agitated. Like I feel like if people were to look at me the wrong way, I would be like, I just give them the stare. Like I just don't want to socialize with anybody. And it's only a couple days. It's maybe like 18, 19, 20. Like those days for me are very, very sensitive for me. So I try to remove myself from social situations at that time. And I also try to keep my interactions with others at a minimum, unless of course it's work or client work. But even then, sometimes I try to work around that, so I don't have to force myself to work on days that I don't feel good, or that mentally I'm not feeling that great. Depending on how bad your PMS symptoms are, sometimes you'll also notice that, I think, did I mention mood swings? Yeah, you'll have mood swings. So like some women get very angry, very sad, very emotional. Some women have like more intense symptoms where their mental health will start to decline, to the point where like they'll want to sabotage relationships in certain situations in their life. And this definitely happened to me when I was younger. But I feel like as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more aware of how my body and my mental health changes throughout the month, I've been able to gauge what's going to happen so I can prepare for that, right? So that's why I pull back from certain situations. That's why I don't force myself to be around certain people that I know that I can't be around, or you know how it goes, like you just work around it. But yeah, for some women it can be very scary, because I think it's called PMDD. It's like the more intense form of premenstrual syndrome, where like your mental health gets really, really bad to the point like I mentioned, you sabotage things in your life, or you have very, very intense mood swings that can really get in the way of your life and of your work. So That'll happen for some women. You'll start to probably realize that you have like some sort of stomach issues going on. So like your GI tract might start to act up. You'll probably notice that you need to drink more water, eat more fiber, but this is also the time, ironically, where we have more cravings. So it's like when you're supposed to be eating healthier, you'll want to eat sweets, or you'll want to eat salty foods. Like for me personally, I crave salt during this time of the month, so I will want to eat like chips, fries, like anything salty that I can get my hands on. It's like I really crave salt, and that's that progesterone acting up. What I have noticed as well, especially because I'm a personal trainer and because I'm very active, I've noticed that during this time of my cycle, I actually need more food. So I'm a lot hungrier during this time, and that's because the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, is actually forming and building up at this time. So we need a lot of energy to counteract that. Other people might disagree with me, like nutritionists might disagree, or even other women might not even notice this, because not everyone is the same. Not everyone is exactly in tune with every part of their cycle like I am. But I have noticed that an extra like 200 to 300 calories per day during this time of the cycle will help counteract any like feelings of fatigue or irritability, moodiness. I feel like it really helps. Personally, I would definitely say that you should bring these calories in from carbs or fats to help support this time of your cycle. So then when we get to like the later luteal phase, this is probably like days 20, 21 to like days 24, or however long, whenever you start your cycle. Personally, I'm on like a very strict 28-day cycle. I'm very, very much in tune with the moon's energies, very in tune with my energy. So mine is pretty spot on. But then during these days, this is when actually progesterone starts to fall off a little bit. So it reaches a peak, depending on the woman, around like days 20 to 22, and then it starts to dip. So around these days is when you'll start to notice that a lot of those like moodiness symptoms, or like food cravings, those feelings of wanting to like be all alone, like wrapped up in a blanket, introspective, like that starts to fade away. So you might actually get a little bit of an increase in energy during this time. Not too much, but there is a little bit of an increase, where you actually might feel more productive, more, I don't know why I'm feeling like agile, but yeah, you'll just want to like be more productive, get a couple things done. It's almost like a nesting phase type of energy, where you just get this little bit of a surge of energy that can help you. There's a hair in my eye. That can help you get certain things done during your day. Where am I going with that? Yeah, and this is essentially like right before the menstrual phase begins. So I actually feel that during this time, I'm usually very introspective. So like personally, I spent the last couple of days journaling a lot. I spent the last couple of days really getting in touch with myself, meditating a little bit more. And this is also like when your intuition is very, very spot on, and where you feel very much in tune with like the earth cycles, the moon cycles. You guys, I don't know, there's like something in my eye. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's like a bunch of eyelashes. But yeah, so during this time of the cycle, you're starting to prepare for your menstrual cycle to begin. For some women, you might not really feel much of a change, but like I said, I've been in touch with mine for a couple of years now, so I know what to expect. And then pretty much this leads us into the menstrual phase, which is of course the bleeding phase. So this is when we are releasing energy. So when it comes to like spirituality, when it comes to the moon cycles, this can be likened to like the waning moon. Well, depending, I don't know, because people look at it different ways. People can look at it as like the waning moon, or they can look at it as the full moon. It just really depends on the perspective that you have on it. But this is the releasing phase. This is the phase of your cycle where you are meant to rest, where you're meant to relax a little bit. And here I am filming for you guys, but it's all right. I rested a couple days before this, and I'm also gonna rest the rest of the weekend. But this is actually when you're gonna begin, excuse me, to have more clarity, like mental clarity. So like in the previous week during the luteal phase, if you felt like your brain was all foggy, mushy, like you couldn't really get in touch with yourself, or you just felt very tired, very out of it, during your menstrual phase, you're gonna start to feel like you have more clarity, especially around like days 2 to 3. So like those first 2 days, they might feel very down, where you have no energy, you just want to recenter yourself, you want to be by yourself. Usually around day 2, 3, you become more energetic and you start to actually feel the hormones literally dissipate out of your body. At least I do. Like when I wake up on like day 2, 3, I'm like, wow, like I'm not bloated anymore. I don't feel sad or angry anymore. Like I feel good. So like for a lot of women, you'll actually feel pretty good on your cycle versus like the week prior. Yeah, so you have more mental clarity. You actually want to start to get things done again. You start to feel better. You start to want to go out more. It just starts to feel like you're coming out of a phase of letting go of like heavy emotions, heavy feelings. A lot of women also, if like you gain a couple pounds of water weight in the luteal phase, you'll lose these pounds during the menstrual phase. So you'll start to realize that you lose like, I don't know, depends on the woman, like 3 to 5 pounds, sometimes a little bit more. It's just water weight. So you'll just feel better because you don't feel bloated, you don't feel heavy, you don't feel foggy and bogged down. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about when it comes to the phases. I even drew a little bit of like a chart here where you guys can see the hormones and how they change throughout the month. So I think I wrote down, yeah, so I mean, this is the proliferative phase. This is where estrogen is in control. So this is basically pretty much when we are feeling very stable, clear, logical. And then this little jump here is that burst of testosterone and luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, where we get that big surge of energy. We're very strong, very attractive, and then it kind of falls off. It's very short-lived. And then this is that luteal phase where progesterone starts to take over and we're feeling very emotional, very hormonal, all of that energy. And then when it falls off again, that's kind of when we get our period. So notice how our hormones shift so much throughout the month. We're definitely creatures of the moon, and I feel like a lot of women, mostly men especially, like they don't really understand what we go through as women. They don't really understand how it affects our lives, and how literally every single day we can feel different. So like some men will say like, oh, women are overreacting, or it's not that bad, or like suck it up and go to work, suck it up and get over it. Like it's really not possible for a lot of women, especially if we're in certain times of our month, especially the luteal phase. Because some of us really don't have like the mental capacity or the emotional capacity to deal with certain things. So I've noticed that especially when it comes to work, I feel like in the past, before I was so much in touch with my feminine energy, I would just suppress it more because I was more so in the energy of masculine, getting things done, productive, wanting to adhere to society's expectations of me. And I would notice that I definitely had a hard time when I was on my cycle. Like I have so many memories and stories of times where I had to like push through certain situations because it was like an important deadline or an important class or an important meeting or presentation that I had to attend. But it was during one of these times of my cycle where I was like really struggling, and I have, like I said, some stories of a couple horror stories and just a couple like emotional stories, but it's like I always made myself push through no matter what. And I feel like now that since I'm in this energy of wanting to step into being like a spiritual guide, a spiritual teacher, helping others, getting more in touch with my feminine side, I really feel like it's important for me to really master these energies so that I can know how to work with my own energies, how to organize my schedule, my life. So like personally for me, I will organize most of my social activities and the activities that require more energetic exertion in the earlier half of my cycle. Whereas when I'm in the luteal and menstrual phase, I'll probably not schedule anything that's like too social, or I won't overbook myself, things like that, because I want to put myself in a situation, I should say I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm trying to provide a service, or where I'm trying to just be in the energy that I don't have, you know. Like it's just hard to explain. Like if you're a woman, you know what I'm talking about. Like some days we wake up and we really don't have the energy to give, we don't have any strength, we don't have, you know what I mean. Like it's just very hard to adhere to society's expectations of wake up early, like go to work, do this, do that. Like some days we really don't, we're not in touch with that. We don't have the ability to do that, which kind of takes me to this point of we aren't really meant to perform like men. And if you'll notice, society is set up in a masculine way where, you know, school starts early and work starts early, and we're meant to work a 9 to 5, or like we're meant to go to school during the early times of the day. And for a lot of women, that's just really not possible, because maybe we can do it 2 weeks out of the month, but then the next 2 weeks we're not really feeling that great, and we feel like we have to pull back, and it's very hard for us to adhere to a cycle where we need to show up every single day the same way. And that's because men have a 24-hour cycle. So they cycle through all their hormones within one day, whereas for us, it takes a month. So like a man can go to work early because they have high testosterone in the morning. Whereas for us, it's different. Like we have high testosterone maybe like 2-3 days out of the month. So there's a couple days where we can wake up early and feel good about it. But there are other times where we might want to sleep a little bit later, or we might want to maybe not get up so quickly in the morning, but spend a couple hours getting in touch with ourselves and reflecting or cleaning or like preparing for the day or whatever the case may be. And I feel like it's very difficult. Like I really don't know where to go with this one because I'm actually still struggling with this one myself. As a woman who has a menstrual cycle, like it's very difficult to adhere to society's expectations of being productive every day and of just following the same routine every day. I feel like a lot of women have a hard time with this, especially in the workplace, where we might notice that our bosses and our superiors, they don't really care. They don't really understand what we go through. I actually had like a recent experience like this at one of my jobs, which I'm actually not at anymore. And it's not because of this reason, it's for something else. But I've noticed that it was a very like active job, and a lot of the times I had to be outdoors as well. So there were certain days that like I just could not do it. I could not put myself out there to be in the sun for 4 or 5 hours in 90-degree heat when I was in my cycle, or when I just didn't feel good. And I noticed that it was slowing down my work productivity, and I couldn't really relate to the men in the field, and I couldn't really I don't know why it's so hard for me to talk about this. I think it's because a lot of the times like I just think about these things, and like me actually talking about this, it makes it a little bit harder to pull these thoughts out of my head. But I have a really hard time just accepting or realizing the fact that like most people don't care. It's like if you tell them like, oh, I don't feel good today, or if you tell your boss or your teachers or whatever, it's like I can't come in today, or I need an extra day to finish this project or to complete this work or whatever it may be, like people don't care. So it's like I don't know how society is, I should especially say, I don't know how women are getting through their days, because like there's so many times where we have to ignore our own intuition, we have to ignore our own body's cues in order to keep up with society's expectations of us. And I feel like it can put a lot of pressure on us, and it can affect our mental health, because it's been a men's world for a very long time. And most people aren't really in touch with their feminine side, and most people are forced to kind of, I don't know why I wanted to say inhabit, but like to ignore that part of them, to keep up with this energy of productivity and consumerism and capitalism that is our society right now. And while that will be changing just gradually over time, I really want to know how like other women deal with this, because as a up-and-coming entrepreneur, as someone who wants to work for myself, as someone who is now able to start to do that, it's definitely easier to plan my schedule and to plan my cycle and to coordinate my schedule with different parts of my cycle. But I feel like most people can't do that. Like most people work regular jobs, most people work 9 to 5. Or most people work jobs where they have to show up at the same time every day, or they have to work like very long hours. And I really want to know how you guys do that. Like, I feel like we as women, like we deserve better. We definitely deserve better from not only society as a whole, but like from our superiors, from our bosses, especially if they're men. I just feel like there has to be a way, like there has to be a way for us to be able to honor our feminine side and to honor our cycles while not really missing out on work. And I feel like that is something that I personally myself, I can't fix that by myself. I feel like this would be something that we would all have to come together as like a community or as a collective to try to solve, because I know that I'm not the only woman that struggles with this. And I've gotten very angry many times. I've been very sad about this specific thing, because I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like we're not meant to be like men. We're not meant to work like men. We're not meant to wake up at the same time every day. We're not meant to do the same thing every single day. Like we're meant to do what we feel we can do. So like in the first 2 weeks of the cycle, maybe we can work like that. But in the second 2 weeks of the cycle, I feel like we're allowed to slow down. We should be allowed to take things slower and to live a little bit of a softer life when our bodies are demanding it, our bodies are asking for it. And like, I feel like I've spent so many years of my life pushing through that feeling where it's like nobody cares, like I gotta keep going, let me take these Advil, let me keep being productive. And it can definitely leave a toll on your body, and it takes a toll on your mental health because it makes you feel like, as a woman, like no one really cares about your needs and no one really cares about how you're feeling, because men will never understand it. But there's even some women that just they can't wrap their minds around it either. And there are some women that don't really experience like their hormones, or they don't really feel as many changes as other women do. Personally, I feel like that's because there is a detachment from the feminine. I feel like there's so many women who have pulled away from their feminine and have pulled it very deep inside themselves, where they don't even know how to get in touch with that part of themselves. So in turn, they're more so functioning on this masculine energy of being productive every single day. But I feel like it pulls you away from your natural energies, from who you really are. So if I were to give you guys any advice, like if you're able to do this, or if you have the means to do this, or if you just feel like you should do this, I feel like you should try to schedule, like if you're resonating with this, I feel like you should try to schedule your work, your health routines, your social activities around your cycle, especially if you feel the way that I do, because you'll start to notice a big difference in your life, like in the quality of your life as well, and in your mental health. So like for me, I don't always do this now when it comes to like my training, because I feel like I've been training for so long, I've been active for so long, that I don't necessarily need to always adjust my training to the phase of my cycle that I'm in, although sometimes I do. So like, let's say, because I program my workouts, right? So let's say I'm in my luteal phase and I'm programmed to hit like, I don't know, 85% of my max for a certain weight, and I can't hit it that week. I'm not going to really get down on myself, because I know that I'm in my luteal phase. I have that conscious awareness, like I have less energy this week, I'm not really feeling my best this week, so let's just either work at lower rep range, or let's try a lower weight. Like I'll just bump the weight down a little bit. I'll always try my best, but I feel like having that awareness and having that conscious understanding of my body and how I feel and where I'm at in certain parts of my cycle, it really, really helps with the mental health aspect of it, because I'm not going to be getting in way over my head. I'm not going to be pressuring myself to do certain things that I know that I can't do, because I know where my body's at that given time. So I mean, if you guys wanted to kind of coordinate your workouts around that, I would definitely say like during the proliferative and ovulatory phase, do most of your heavy work there. Especially if you're just getting into fitness, or if you're just getting into tracking your cycle. And when it comes to the luteal and menstrual phase, try to slow it down. Try to do more like yoga, walking, more like low impact type of exercise during that part of your cycle, because that's really going to help support your mental health and your body during that time. If you're into running, if you're into like high impact sports or high energy sports, I would again do that in the first half. So like proliferative, ovulatory phase, take advantage of those times. Like if you're gonna run a race, or if you're gonna compete in something, do that during the ovulatory phase, because you're gonna feel your best. I would never say I mean, of course, everyone has free will and not everyone is as sensitive to their hormones as I am. But I would never try to say to like schedule some sort of big competitive event during like a luteal phase or during a menstrual phase, unless you know that you can do that. But I personally would never do that to myself, because I know how I am. When it comes to food, if you guys notice that you feel guilty because you want to eat more food, or you have certain cravings during that later time of your month, during that later time of your cycle, don't really beat yourself up about it, because that's your hormones. Like you can't really control that. It's just your hormones asking for certain things because your body feels that it needs it. And as someone who eats intuitively, I usually always give in to those cravings, depending on what they are, depending on, your girl loves to eat. I love to fucking eat. So I don't really restrict myself from anything. So I would not feel bad about that. I wouldn't make yourself feel guilty about craving like saltier foods or fattier foods or sweeter foods during that time of your cycle, because I feel like you need it, you know, you need it. And when it comes to feeling guilty about working or productivity, I feel like, again, that's just a really tough one for me, because personally, I've always been like a very productive person. I've always been in touch with that masculine side of myself. So it's a little bit tougher to talk about that, especially because, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, most of society is functioning on a man's schedule where we have to wake up early, we have to be productive like all day long. Like it's not possible for most people, most women I should say. So that one I don't really have an answer to, because it's not like I can tell everybody who's watching this to quit their jobs and to do their own thing, although I really wish that was the case. But I just really feel like society as a whole needs to do better. I feel like there should be more education on the menstrual cycle. There should be more education on how men and women are vastly different in the ways that their bodies work. And I feel like we should be allowed as women to have a different type of work routine. We should be allowed to either work for ourselves, we should be allowed to be given like certain, I don't know, because I know when it comes to like the way that the world works right now, it's not like we can just work whenever we want and we can rest whenever we want, although that's ultimately the goal here. I feel like eventually society and communities as a whole, we're going to shift to more of a feminine way of living, where we're not going to be needing to be productive every day, but we're going to be honoring our bodies and our hormones, or we're going to be honoring what we feel that we should be doing intuitively, versus trying to force ourselves to step into this productive energy every single day. But that one is kind of like an open-ended one there. I don't really know what else to add there. I know that I've been in conflict with myself about that, because it's like, how do people not care? Like, how do people not understand? Like, it's just mind-blowing to me. I feel like the workforce is very capitalistic, and that's obviously the case. I feel like we're not meant to be that way. We're not meant to be workhorses. We're not meant to work like men. And even some men can't work that way. Like, not every single man has the energy to get up every single morning at the same time and work 10, 12-hour shifts, although many of them do. But it's like, we really need to, I think, as women, we need to honor the fact that we're different, and we need to find a method that works for us. So I know that that's something that we're going to need to be growing into over time as a collective. That's going to be something that is probably going to take a lot of time to get to that point. But I'll leave that one open for you guys. Definitely let me know what you think about this, especially about that last point, because I feel like it's very hard as women to just fit in without dishonoring ourselves. You know, it's not like we can't do it. It's not like it's impossible for us. Like, we can definitely put ourselves in a situation where we're working very hard, or where we're in more of our masculine energy, because I've done it pretty much my whole life. But it's like, it comes to a point where, depending on how far along you are in your spiritual journey, or how in touch you are with yourself, like, it comes to a point where it's like, is it really supposed to be this way? It's like, I feel like I'm stepping out of my feminine energy to go work for a place that doesn't respect me, or I feel like I'm stepping out of my feminine energy to do something that I really don't want to do. And I found myself in that position multiple times. So definitely let me know how you feel about that. I think that's all I wanted to say when it comes to this podcast here. I talked about a little bit of my experience with birth control. I talked about the different phases. Let me know if you guys have questions. I know that I was all over the place again. I'm just gonna say that's just how I talk. This is just how I am, but I'm very, like, I'll go off on tangents, and even if I have my points here, like, it's just how I talk. But I think that's all I wanted to share. It's pretty much just me wanting to kind of educate a little bit about the cycle, about the hormones, and then just mention how women are not really supposed to work like men. Like, we have a totally different cycle. We change every single day. It takes us a month to kind of go through the same cycle, whereas for a man, they go through that in one day. So definitely let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and if you guys have any other ideas for podcasts that you want me to talk about, or different topics you want me to address, definitely let me know, and I will do my best to add that to my list. So I think I'm just gonna leave this here. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope I was able to help someone with this information, and I will see you in one of my upcoming videos. Bye.